Father, glory to my God. Yeah. Praise God. Praise God. Praise God. Praise God. Praise God. Praise God. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, they go low and we go high. They play.
Peace. What's going on? Hey, I definitely am in the middle of watching this on C-SPAN 2, so I'm definitely just going to go ahead and switch over to that. We're watching currently the live feed from the Senate as they're battling for over the $2,000
Question,
checks.
you want to bring up corporate liability? Bring it up. You want to bring up Section 230? Bring it up. You want to bring up the man on the moon? Bring it up. But what the American people want now is an upward down no vote. Now, you're going to vote against it if it comes to the floor. That's fine. It's your right. Explain it to the people of Texas. I will vote for it. But all that I am asking for is the right as a United States Senator to have the vote. And again, I ask you, what is your problem with members of the United States Senate, including a number of Republicans who have already indicated they would like to vote for this? What's your problem with bringing that up as a single standalone bill, not merged with corporate liability or anything else? What's your problem with that?
Mr. President.
And that is a very good
Mr.
question.
President, I would say to our
Why
colleague
you
from
just won't
Vermont,
bring it up to
this
a
money
vote?
is not targeted to people who suffered financial losses. It is not targeted to people who suffered financial losses. This money would go to members of your own staff if they meet the financial requirements. Other government employees who've suffered no financial loss during this pandemic. We've all suffered in different ways during the pandemic, to be sure, but financially, this money is designed to help the people who need it the most. Why would you send money to government employees that have been receiving their full paycheck during this pandemic?
That's a good question, and then I will have to explain that to the people of the state of Vermont.
The Senator for Texas has the floor.
He asked me a question as I understood it.
The Senator for Texas.
John, did you ask me a question? Did I?
The Senator for Texas.
It was more of a rhetorical question, Mr. President.
The Senator for Texas.
Mr. President, I wanted to come to the floor and talk about what strikes me as
This
something
thing is
akin to
getting heated.
Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day isn't only the day I was born, it's something I feel like we're living through here as we debate the same points over and over and over again, forgetting what it is we've already done, the good things we've done together on a bipartisan basis. We've already appropriated roughly $4 trillion in response to this pandemic. And it's
If you're in the
appropriate
chat, give me a
that we
holler.
have done so because this was a true public health crisis. But now this is, we're seeing politics creep back in and an attempt to send money to people who've suffered no financial loss in an untargeted and wasteful sort of way. These relief packages that we passed together have provided hundreds of billions of dollars to support our hospitals and healthcare workers who are on the front lines. And I voted for it, and I think we were right to do so. We've thrown small businesses and their employees a lifeline through the Paycheck Protection Program, and we were right to do so. We've invested in research and development, manufacturing of therapeutics and vaccines that are currently being administered, thank goodness, throughout the country and indeed around the world. And we sent unprecedented assistance to workers, families, and individuals whose livelihoods have been upended by this crisis. Thanks to President Trump's leadership, Congress has stepped up and met this unprecedented challenge to deliver relief bill after relief bill for the American people. If you had told me a year ago I would have voted this year alone for roughly $4 trillion worth of spending in this pandemic, I would not have believed you. But I do believe this is the domestic equivalent to World War II, where we have to do everything humanly possible to try to help our fellow man, woman, and child during this pandemic. The latest round of relief came, of course, just this week when President Trump signed the $900 billion rescue package into law. While I'm glad Congress was able to send more relief out the door at the end of the year, I'm disappointed that it took so long to do so. It's amazing the sense of urgency our Democratic colleagues have today since at least 3 times, maybe 4 times, they blocked our attempts to pass $500 billion relief bills during the course of the summer. In July, our colleagues introduced the HEALS Act, which would have provided just under $1 trillion in relief, covering the same types of policies included in the most recent relief bill: direct payments, unemployment benefits, funding for schools, vaccine, and a host of other priorities. Our Democratic colleagues not only complained about the bill, they called it weak, little, pathetic, and unserious. But they refused to engage in the sort of negotiations that are customary around here when you actually want to solve a problem, or consider anything short of the House's multi-trillion-dollar bill, which they knew had no chance of passing in the Senate because of things like tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires, which had nothing to do with COVID. So our Democratic colleagues dragged their feet. July, August, September, October, November. Months went by and the cases soared and the economic squeeze tightened, and our Democratic colleagues refused to accept any sort of compromise. That was until a few weeks ago when they finally changed their tune right after the election. I'm sure it comes as no surprise that once the holdout agrees to negotiate, things can move pretty quickly. And that's what happened here after the election. Democrats, Republicans, and the administration agreed to a $900 billion package, which looks very similar to the one they dubbed pathetic just a few months ago. In recent days, the president has expressed an interest in doing more. And I have no doubt that we will do more in this area. But Speaker Pelosi's bill goes far beyond what the president is talking about. For one, it would dramatically widen the pool of recipients, enabling wealthy households to qualify for relief checks. This is unacceptable and wasteful. When Congress provided the first round of direct payments through the CARES Act, we did so in a way that sent relief to the hardest hit Americans. Individuals who made up to $75,000 received the full $1,200, and the amount gradually declined as income increased and completely phased out at $99,000. We kept the same formula for the $600 payments provided for under the omnibus and further targeted the relief. Once again, those who made up to $75,000 will receive the full amount, and the amount phases out completely at $87,000. Under the CARES Act, a family of 4 earning up to $150,000 received $3,400. In the most recent rescue bill, the same family would receive an additional $2,400. This was the most effective and targeted way to ensure that assistance goes to those who actually need it, while avoiding sending taxpayer dollars, borrowed, I might add, to those who don't. The House-passed legislation would provide $2,000 payments, but it doesn't have a similar structure to keep these payments targeted. Let me give you an example. If this bill were to become law, a person making $100,000 a year would receive a $750 check from the federal government, whether or not they lost income during the pandemic. This isn't someone who used to make that much but was laid off or had reduction in their income. Someone who's currently earning a 6-figure salary would receive an additional $750 from American taxpayers. For families, the income barrier goes higher. As I mentioned a moment ago, if you have a family of 5 with an annual household income of $350,000 a year, that family would receive a stimulus check under the House-passed bill. Now, that's not being smart with taxpayer dollars, and that's not targeted at the people who actually need it. That's a giveaway to people who have not suffered any financial losses during this pandemic, and clearly not targeted at those who need the most help. I mentioned a moment ago that the median income for households in Texas is $60,000 a year.
The reason why I cut it off, because I have a question. If we're gonna target this to people who didn't lose any kind of income, the question is, would they be willing to raise the amount for those who actually need the income? Answer is probably not.
Even though Congress has already provided roughly $4 trillion in relief to the American people, Our Democratic colleagues are acting as though this is the first and only way to help our country. Like I said, for them, every day is Groundhog Day. They ignored everything we've done in the past and act like this is the only thing we have or could do. It's just not true. This debate isn't about whether or not Congress should help families who are struggling. We have, and there's no question we'll continue to do so where needed. That's why we provided $1,200 in direct payments to the hardest hit Americans through the CARES Act and an additional $600 through the most recent relief bill. That's why these bills also bolstered state unemployment benefits and expanded them to include independent contractors and self-employed. That's why Congress has passed legislation to provide food assistance to families, keep more hardworking Americans on the payroll, and ensure our economy is on track for a strong recovery. Again, we did this thanks to the leadership of President Trump and by working together in a bipartisan way. Countless Texans have told me about the impact of this relief on their businesses and their families, and we can't lose sight of the progress that has already been made. But future relief must be targeted. We need to support those who need it and avoid sending hundreds of billions of dollars, as this proposal would, to those who don't need it. Throughout the year, I've been an advocate for an incremental approach to these relief bills because I think it's hard to spend $3 trillion and know exactly how that bill is going to work. And indeed, we found out through the CARES Act that the Main Street lending facility, which we funded at roughly $500 billion, it wasn't as useful as we would have hoped. Conversely, the Paycheck Protection Program was more successful than our wildest dreams. And so I think by seeing what works and what doesn't work, we can be better stewards of the taxpayer dollars by spending the money more efficiently and in a more targeted way. This isn't like highway bills or farm bills or defense spending bills where we have an idea about what's needed for individual programs. There was no precedent for this pandemic, no handbook, no clear way to gauge how long this crisis would go on or what would be needed to sustain our response. After the CARES Act passed, we knew it made the most sense to hit the pause button and see what worked well, what didn't, and where more help was needed. As I said, there were certain programs like the Paycheck Protection Program that almost immediately dried up. If I'm not mistaken, in 2 weeks, roughly $350 billion was obligated under the Paycheck Protection Program, a strong indication that we really hit the sweet spot when it came to helping those small businesses. And that's why we added more funding in April, another $320 billion. And we extended the program in July and reinvested in the Paycheck Protection Program again in the omnibus. As I said, there were other places where the money went unspent, but fortunately in the most recent bill, we were able to repurpose hundreds of billions of dollars in unspent funds, again, to target it to where the need was greatest, where it could help the most. There's no question that tens of millions of workers and their families have been hurt by this virus. We all know that. And I think we've all acted together, by and large, responsibly in trying to respond to that. No one will be left out if we have a means and method of targeting this to those people, whether it's direct payments, enhanced unemployment benefits, incentives to their employer to maintain them on payroll. And now that we have the beginning of the distribution of the vaccine, my hope is that in the coming months, we will get back to, if not the new normal, whatever the next normal will be. But we're just a few days from kicking off a new Congress, and I have no reason to believe that our coronavirus relief work is finished here today. As a matter of fact, Vice President Biden said he expects to send us an additional request for help once he assumes office. Once the legislation we have passed has a chance to benefit the American people, we'll see if more relief is needed. And then, if it is needed, we should absolutely do more. I still believe in the wisdom of the incremental approach, and I believe our Democrat friends will join us in responding to true needs of this crisis without month-long delays or irresponsible spending. Countless Texans have told me about the importance of the relief that we provided through direct payments unemployment benefits, food assistance, and other forms of support by the laws we passed throughout this year. I was proud to support each of these policies, which have eased the financial strains on millions of Texans and other Americans, and will continue to work with my colleagues to provide assistance as our war on COVID-19 rages on. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
The senator for Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've heard a lot of revisionist history this afternoon. Look back in March when Congress did the right thing. The Senate voted unanimously. Because of our efforts, 13 million people were kept out of poverty. We know that because we did relatively generous unemployment insurance. We did the direct payments. We helped with small business loans. But then this Senate thought its work was done for the year. We begged Senator McConnell month after month after month to come back and help. As I said, 13 million people were kept out of poverty because of the work this Congress did in March of this year. But now, since many of these benefits, especially the unemployment benefit and the direct payments were not continued, of course, those benefits expired in August, and we have seen 8 million people drop into poverty in this country since. And yet this Congress, Senator McConnell refused and refused and refused. I hear this revisionist history that Democrats just want to help people that are already affluent, give them more money. Well, remember back in March, the only amendment that we considered, the only amendment that Senator McConnell allowed on the floor of the Senate to the CARES Act, the only amendment was to take away the $600 a week unemployment insurance. The only place Republicans fought was the $600 a week unemployment insurance. That, more than any single thing we did, is why people were kept out of poverty. Now, the best we could do was $300 a week unemployment insurance, the best we could do. And Senator McConnell, in spite of Senator Cornyn and others' comments, Senator McConnell waited. Finally, we were able to do it. The President of the United States threatened to veto it, causing millions of Americans to fall off their unemployment insurance. I mean, we know all that. It's just important to remember all that. But there's one simple question before the Senate this week: are we going to put more money in people's pockets? The American people made it clear on Election Day they want a government that's on their side. This is our chance to deliver for them, to show people whom we serve that we can make a real difference in their lives, which we did back in March. It's pretty simple. The best way to help Ohio workers and families is to put more money in their pockets, not in the bank accounts of the largest corporations and the biggest banks, hoping it will trickle down. We know it never does. The CEOs just pay themselves instead. We know, Mr. President, just recently, more good news for America's CEOs who are able again to do stock buybacks, more dividend distributions. A lot of corporations have made a lot of money more power to them during this pandemic. But those are the corporations that continue to get the big tax breaks. We need to instead directly invest in people who make this country work. It helps people pay the bills and stay in their homes and get through this downturn. It injects money into local economies that really need it. The more money people have, the more they spend at small businesses that are hurting. We know this works. It did in the spring. We came together. We crossed the aisle, passed the CARES Act, expanded unemployment, did direct stimulus checks, keeping 13 million people out of poverty. The bill we passed last week was a good step in that direction, but we should make it stronger. Back in March, my original plan that I tried to negotiate as I sat with Secretary Mnuchin and a handful of other senators was a $2,000 a week, $2,000 per person, adults and children. We called for them to be sent automatically throughout the year, every quarter, as long as we remain in a public health emergency. It's clear now what we could have done and should have done. No one could predict how long this crisis would last. Today, we still aren't sure when everyone will be vaccinated, when the economy will return to full strength. We don't want to sit idly by. We don't want to wonder how bad it could get. We're the strongest, richest country on earth. We have the resources to do something about it. We just need leadership willing to use every tool we have. If they refuse to support this $2,000 per person. If they refuse to support these direct payments, Leader McConnell and Senate Republicans will again make it perfectly clear for the American people whose side they're on. Every time there's a fork in the road, and Senator McConnell and Senate Republicans have to make a decision, either go with corporate interests or go with working families. Every single time they choose corporate interests. They had no problem pouring money into corporate coffers with their tax cut and blowing up the deficit. I remember, Mr. President, just down the hall here, Senator McConnell's office. I remember lobbyists lining up looking for those tax cuts back 3 years ago, and they got those tax cuts. They didn't say anything about government deficits back then, $1.5 trillion added to the deficit. They didn't mind that because that was money going into their contributors' pockets, into big corporate coffers, into the wealth for the wealthiest people in this country. They were all too happy to let the government shovel loans to the biggest banks and companies. But in the middle of the worst crisis of our lifetimes, faced with a chance to give money directly to ordinary Americans, my colleagues claim we can't afford it. That's just simply a lie. We're the richest country on earth. I remember Bill Spriggs, economist at Howard University, told the Banking and Housing Committee in September, "We didn't win World War II by worrying whether or not we could afford it. We're in a global crisis. We marshaled all our vast resources and talents to rise to meet it. We grew the economy from middle class out. We paid down the debt with raising wages. If we've learned anything from this crisis, it should be that we can do the same again." Americans are tired of being told we can't. It's the only answer that Senator McConnell and Senate Republicans ever have with most people's problems. We can't help you. We can't solve your problem. You're on your own. Let's aim higher. Let's deliver for the people we serve. Let's put $2,000 into their pockets, money that will make such a difference for so many families. It will help a mother worried about how she'll pay back rent. It'll keep a laid-off restaurant worker from turning to a payday lender. It will allow a father to buy a new computer so his kids are better able to learn online. These are millions of real people we swore an oath to serve, who would breathe a little easier this New Year's if we pass this. So let's be clear about the decision today and this week before the Senate. Are we going to give the people we serve $2,000? Or are you going to stand in the way? It's that simple. Let's come together. Let's pass this. Let's make a real difference in people's lives. I note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.
Today, the Senate begins work on overriding President Trump's veto of the 2021 Defense Programs and Policy Bill. The president objected to the measure because it didn't include a repeal of Section 230.
So there you have it. There we have it. At the moment, we really don't know what we have going on. We're kind of in limbo right now. We're gonna see later on as they continue this fight over the $2,000 stimulus checks for the people. But again, this is up to Mitch McConnell to actually move the needle on this and actually bring the vote to the floor. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that any of the senators on the Democratic side are asking is just for the bill to be brought to the floor so they can vote on it. But Mitch McConnell himself not only just Mitch McConnell, but Mitch McConnell and all of the Republicans who are against the actual bill, they know that the votes are already there. The votes are already there. And the only way that they can block it is if they don't bring it to the floor. They continue to object to the bill itself, as well as if they start to try to finagle with the verbiage inside of the bill, i.e., all of the poison pills that Mitch McConnell was trying to add into the bill. But the argument on the Democratic side is basically, hey, this is a standalone bill. It should be left alone. We should be able to vote for this bill freely. We should freely be able to vote for this bill. But again, Mitch McConnell knows that they already have the votes. This is very trying, and I think it was very effective, not to the senators, but to the Republican Party as a whole, for Bernie Sanders to bring out those messages talking about what Donald Trump actually said. He said $2,000 ASAP, ASAP, exclamation mark. And that was today. And then yesterday he said the same thing. So now it's becoming apparent that the Republicans of the Senate are creating this rift on purpose because they don't want to either A, give a win to Donald Trump, or B, they don't want to give a win to the Democrats. Either way, they are against giving the people. And I sat here and I listened to almost every single thing that they had to say. But nothing they actually said made any sense at all to me. It really didn't even scratch the surface of any reasonable reason as to why there was there's any objection to the stimulus. So it strikes me as very odd for them to even come up with this sham of whether anyone should get stimulus. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a huge sham as to whether anybody should get stimulus. I don't understand. I do not understand why they won't even bring it to the floor. If you give them any of their stances on why there shouldn't be a vote on it. They said, oh, it's going to give money to people who haven't lost their jobs. Oh, it's going to give money to, it's not targeted enough. We can't afford it. Oh, we can't. But the biggest thing that keeps on haunting them is the fact that they're trying to push this bill that's $750 billion, $750 billion for the military-industrial complex. $750 billion for the military-industrial complex. And that's what they're arguing about. But when it comes to the American people, we only got $600 to give to y'all. And they are willing to go against their party. They're willing to go against they're willing to go against the president. They're really going to giving a middle finger to everyone and anybody who thinks that this is a good idea to give $2,000 to the people. I mean, a stimulus check is to stimulate the economy. And I heard one of the senators say that, one of the reasons why he didn't want to give it was because the economy was up. Which, granted, yes, the economy is up. But again, you're not talking about keeping the economy strong when we, again, don't know if we're going to have a second wave. We haven't had a second wave yet. We've had the second iteration of coronavirus come which was in Colorado. But we have not had the second wave actually come to, and I'm gonna turn this up just a little bit in my headphones to see what they're talking about. These are floor remarks. Okay, so they doing a reiteration, but again, it doesn't make any sense. Not even in the least. Does it make sense to say that we can't afford this when almost every single other country that has a lower amount of money that they pay their military? See, we have the largest budget for our military, but the countries who don't have large budgets for their military ended up giving that money to the people, which shows you the reason why. And a lot of Republicans, they're going to say, oh, that's socialism. That's socialism. It's not socialism when we have a pandemic going on. A pandemic that has been going on for an entire year. A pandemic where we are just getting a vaccine, and the vaccine has some horrible effects, side effects on it, because it was rushed through the ringer. That's one. And then two, we have a virus that has mutated. We don't even know the effects of the mutated virus on the when it comes to the actual vaccination, as well as, again, there's supposed to be a second wave. Now, I know that sounds like fear-mongering, and I know that sounds like I'm on blue side, but we have to be real about this. We have to be real about this. Either you're going to help the people who are hurting, or you're going to continue to be bureaucratic about the process to which we're going to pay Americans so that they can stay at home. The mass majority of Americans are not able to stay at home to stay at home under the state orders, because again, the state governments have a lot to do about what happens with the lockdowns and restrictions and all of that. So you're asking them to stay at home and work less, but the federal government is not doing their part in helping to pay them and keep them healthy. So again, like, this is an entire mess because they just don't want to open the purse. And I truly feel they are playing politics as if this is going to help them win the Georgia runoff. But again, Mitch McConnell, as I see him, that man is looking older and older by the day. So again, he may not even be in the right mind to continue, and he knows it. He knows he's about to take a loss. And that loss he's about to take is the fact that he's going to have to retire, because they're going to lose this election. And if they lose this election, he loses power. I would never, when it comes to the next election for the Kentucky senator, he has really put himself in danger, because the people of Kentucky, depending on how much longer this coronavirus goes, they're going to remember it, and they're not going to forget what Mitch McConnell did during the coronavirus. As stoic as he may be, this is the wrong fight for him to try to bully his way through. He is in a corner. He has the House, which has voted for this and passed it with the 2/3 majority, and you have the president who supports this. I know everybody is hype about Joe Biden becoming president, but again, like, with Joe Biden being president, what does that really mean? Does that really mean that Joe Biden himself is going to do what it is that Trump is asking of them? Or is he going to downplay it and do exactly what the Republicans are doing? Because we know at this current moment, Joe Biden is more corporatist than anything. Just look at his cabinet. So again, in the Senate, we need to bring this to a vote. And until we bring this to a vote, the American people are going to lose. It's just as simple as that. So with that said, what do you guys think? How are you feeling about what has transpired, and what do you think is going to happen in the next few days as it comes to as they continue to fight over this bill? Bernie Sanders has already said he's going to try and filibuster during this session all the way up till past the 31st. So past New Year's till Monday, until they can't take a filibuster no more. So Bernie might have a heart attack up that jump if he think he gonna go that long. But we know in government, in government history, that has happened. The filibuster has happened for days and has worn people out to the point where they're just like, man, I can't take it. You got to bring out the big guns, man. The psychological warfare might have to happen in order to get to the stone hearts of these people. It's almost like Moses talking to the Pharaoh, let my people go. And the Pharaoh's heart is so cold, so hard. It's going to take God himself to turn that heart from stone. So, I don't know what it is that's going on the floor right now. Let's take a listen.
Pass every year. It's the NDAA, the National Defense
So they're talking about the
Authorization Act, is
NDAA.
one that this will be the 60th year. Is it 60th or 61st year? 60, okay. The 60th year that we've passed this. And it's
So right now they're talking about the NDAA. I'm not worried about that right now. But I feel like if they do pass the NDAA, it's going to, again, Bernie Sanders said he's going to filibuster until they bring that House bill to a vote. And that's what we're waiting for, to bring this House bill to a vote. And it's just a hard thing. So, again, what do you guys think about what's going on, what's actually going on as it concerns this bill? Do you need this stimulus? And if you do, are you talking to your senators? Are you blowing up their phones? What are you doing to get them to budge on this? Especially you guys in Kentucky. Are they not answering the phones? I really want to know what is going out in the world, especially in these states where you have these Republican senators who are against this bill. So that's our show for this evening. I truly appreciate each and every last one of you for tuning in. I just want to say, love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. Peace and blessings. Peace.
Praise God. Praise God. Praise God. Praise God. Praise God. Praise God. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, they go low and we go high. They breaking down any op. Only care about what God say. Mobbing hard with the tribe, yeah. All the glory to my Yahweh, all the glory to my God, yeah. I did my toe and now I'm fresh, yeah. Shout out to my Abba, yeah. I follow, no regrets, yeah. They ain't learn a lesson. I'm still blessed when disrespected. Father got me eating while they out here looking packaged. Ugh. You just mad I ain't following Twitter D. Looking at me like enemy, only like in vicinity. I'm so high with the energy, yeah. You follow his way, yeah. Follow his way, yeah. Laser light show never fade, no. Ain't no stage chill. We got all night. No switch, we that bright light. On lane, we might take flight. Flight check ain't no right height. We don't fall or lose sight. Follow his way, yeah. Follow his way, yeah. We got the juice, we got the watts. Ain't no way we fading. They go low and we go high. They play ego limbo on the other side. We keep humble, ain't no honor in your pride. Lying in me, lethal weapon on my side. Praise my God, promise we ain't coming down. Same thing for the crown, same thing for the team. Breaking down any op, only care about what God say. Mobbing hard with the tribe, yeah. All the glory to my Yahweh, all the glory to my God, yeah. Praise God, praise God, praise God, praise God, praise God, praise God. Yeah. Yeah, hey, they go low and we go high. They play ego limbo on the other side. We keep humble, ain't no honor in your pride. Lying in me, lethal weapon on my side. Praise my God, promise we ain't coming down. Same thing for the crown, same thing for the team. Breaking down any op, only care about what God say. Mobbing hard with the tribe, yeah. All the glory to my Yahweh, all the glory to my God, yeah. I did my toe and now I'm fresh, yeah. Shout out to my Abba, yeah. I follow, no regrets, yeah. They ain't learn a lesson. I'm still blessed when disrespected. Father got me eating while they out here looking packaged. Ugh. You just mad I ain't following Twitter D. Looking at me like enemy, only like in vicinity. I'm so high with the energy, yeah. You follow his way, yeah. Follow his way, yeah. Laser light show never fade, no. Ain't no stage chill. We got all night. No switch, we that bright light. On lane, we might take flight. Flight check ain't no right height. We don't fall or lose sight. Follow his way, yeah. Follow his way, yeah. We got the juice, we got the watts. Ain't no way we fading. They go low and we go high. They play ego limbo on the other side. We keep humble, ain't no honor in your pride. Lying in me, lethal weapon on my side. Praise my God, promise we ain't coming down. Same thing for the crown, same thing for the team. Breaking down any op, only care about what God say. Mobbing hard with the tribe, yeah. All the glory to my Yahweh, all the glory to my God, yeah. Praise God, praise God, praise God, praise God, praise God, praise God. Yeah. Yeah, hey, they go low and we go high. They play ego limbo on the other side. We keep humble, ain't no honor in your pride. Lying in me, lethal weapon on my side. Praise my God, promise we ain't coming down. Same thing for the crown, same thing for the team. Breaking down any op, only care about what God say. Mobbing hard with the tribe, yeah. All the glory to my Yahweh, all the glory to my God, yeah. I did my toe and now I'm fresh, yeah. Shout out to my Abba, yeah. I follow, no regrets, yeah. They ain't learn a lesson. I'm still blessed when disrespected. Father got me eating while they out here looking packaged. Ugh.